Hey there. Maybe you were expecting Tim and Sam. We're not Tim and Sam. I'm Bryan Friedman. I've been a guest on this show before. I'm a technical director here at Moderne, and I'm joined by an actual engineer, Kevin. How's it going, Kevin?
Yeah, I'm going great. How are you, Bryan?
I'm good. So Tim and Sam both out this week, as you can tell. So you're stuck with us. We've got a really interesting topic today to get into.
Should we introduce ourselves a little bit first?
Sure, yeah, we can do a little bit more of that. Absolutely.
They know who Sam and Tim are. Why don't you tell people who you are? Remind us.
Sure, yeah. So, like I said, technical director. I've been here at Moderne since May, so can't believe it's coming up on a year. It's really crazy. I'm based in Southern California. I've got 2 girls and a little poodle mix dog for the last 6 or 8 months. I like to go to I like to perform and go to theater. I like puzzles. What else do I like? I like television. Just hanging out with my family. So that's me.
Nice. I'm Kevin. I've been here. We're on March 4th, so in 4 days it'll have been 5 years.
Wow.
So early days person. I now work on the customer success team here, helping customers get onboarded onto Moderne and build the things that they need to build to get all of their code updated to the latest versions of everything and get agent tools connected and all that. I live in Buenos Aires, Argentina, as you can tell by the outlet structure here. In my free time, I play a lot of video games. I love learning languages. I'm here basically because I learned Spanish for 2 years and then decided to come here on vacation and then met my wife. And then I also been baking a lot of sourdough bread recently. I came in 5 years late to that trend.
Incredible. Yeah, I did a little bit of that during COVID. Like I was just a follower basically. But it looks like you've got some, you were sharing in Slack the other day that you did like a jalapeno one.
Yeah, cheddar jalapeno. Yep.
Yeah,
it was
so good.
For sure the best one I've made. I tried to make one over Christmas for a friend and it turned out like super underbaked and whatever, because I didn't know what I was doing and their oven's different from mine. But it was perfect. It's like really springy and the cheddar and the jalapenos were like perfectly distributed through the bread.
How did you get the starter? Did you make it yourself or did you get it from somebody?
I did make it myself.
Impressive. Yeah.
It took a month. So they tell you it takes 4 days or 4 days to a week, but no, it took me a month to get the starter strong enough to actually. It did have the crunch. You got to do the squeeze, and then I like to eat as much of the bread as I can the first day because then the crust is crunchy.
Yeah. Oh man, that sounds. I'm hungry now, but anyway, another hour before I can eat. So, cool. So I guess we can do a few announcements before we get into the topic. So let me share that. So the reason that Tim is not with us is because he's at DevNexus this week with some of our team. So if you are at DevNexus or in Atlanta, go visit them. Yesterday, was this yesterday? Wow. Yes, this was yesterday. We released TryGrep, which is a really cool tool, interesting tool for doing really fast search across a vast amount of code. It is particularly helpful for agents who are doing searching for code because they like to grep. Agents like to grep things. So
it's a big reason why we chose. I assume we'll do a code remix at some point.
I was going to say this is a definite future code remix weekly.
Yeah. We gave it the name TryGrep because it's based on trigrams, which were heavily used in cryptographic. What's the word I'm looking for? Codes in World War II to be able to cryptographic ciphers. That's the word I'm looking for in World War II, and it's just a really efficient way of searching through text. And we gave it the name TryGrep so that agents will try to reach for it instead of grep.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, definite future topic. So more on that at some point. We also have a webinar coming up. This is just a little over, like, about 2 weeks away, about automated changes at scale. We've got our own Jonathan will be there, and folks from Netflix and Airbnb and LinkedIn. And so this should be a really good conversation to see how everyone's doing all of their changes, whether it's with AI or whatever they're trying to do. Other big news is that we have released a major version of our CLI. So that's pretty big. You could probably talk about this better than I can, Kevin, but there's a whole bunch of changes that came along with it, and the document kind of goes into it. But what's the high level?
We're making it so there's a lot of new features in it. So we won't go through all of those new features, but it's a lot faster. So I mean, the most important thing is it's a lot faster. So the native binaries for the individual for Linux and Mac are no longer huge and really slow, and it's now just basically built into mod W wrapper, and then that includes a built-in JRE so that you don't have to also have Java on your machine to be able to use it, and it's consistent. Will give the exact same results whether you're on Windows, Mac, Linux. And then there's a whole bunch more features that we'll be sharing in incoming weeks, like the agent tools that come with it and things like that.
Yeah. So I'll drop a link in there to share for folks. Awesome. All right. So I think we can get into it now. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
We're talking about Prethink today, which is a product that we announced a couple weeks ago. So we're going to dig into how that works. The idea behind Prethink really is, we were talking about agents earlier. Guess I don't need to be sharing this anymore. There we go. So we were talking about agents earlier and how they reach for grep a lot. They're doing a lot of searching of code, and I know, Kevin, our team has been using agents quite a bit. So maybe if you could share some of your experience about what works well with agents, and kind of why Prethink actually is what it is and why it helps, because context is king, right? That's the key.
Yep. Yeah. So most of my day, I spend my time split between Claude Code and customer meetings, and reviewing pull requests, my own and from other folks. And but a lot of my changes start with a draft from an agent now, and I think most of our customers are starting, and just people in the industry are starting to go that route. Yep. The first thing that an agent has to do when it gets into your code base is go figure out what the heck this code base is. And so it does a lot of grepping, it does a lot of globbing, like listing out of files and then reading individual files. And every time, so let's say you have 3 developers trying to solve, you're trying to mob on there's an outage, and you're trying to mob on it, and you've got 3 folks who have their agents on the same code base or on the same set of repositories looking for where this problem might be. Historically, you'd add debugging statements, or literally debug through the code, or read through the code to try to figure out where it might be, look at logs, things like that. Now you send an agent out, give an agent all that context, and it's got to figure out the code base. And so all of those agents are, burning through all those tokens. I think what we ended up calling this, stop burning through millions of tokens. They're going to read, especially for big repos or big sets of repos, going to have to read almost the entire repository to understand it.
Yep.
So so Prethink really came out because we have a need to pre-give that context to the agent. Like, here's as much as you need. I mean, you can get more if you need to get more detailed in a specific class or something like that. But this is like the base of the context.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and we have all that information. We can go get it from the LST, and the recipe can kind of dump it out into structures that agents like to read easily, like CSVs and Markdown, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So I've got a demo for you all today. So we're gonna actually see how this works. I'll start by sharing sort of the recipe, the Prethink recipes, or the Prethink recipe. I have, As I've said on the show before, I enjoy the cooking show model, and I'm going to just show you a recipe that has already been run so that we do not have to wait for it. Although the demo I'm going to do will be live, and anytime you're doing a live demo with an AI agent, you just never know what's going to happen. But I think we should be okay. So let me share the recipe. I guess I just have to do that. There we go. Cool. So this is the update prethink context recipe. There's two versions of this recipe. One has sort of is enhanced with AI. With if you wanted to point it to an LLM that you have in your environment, like ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, you can point it to that, and it'll actually create sort of like AI generated additional notes about things that it'll sort of like enhance the output. But the no AI version works very well also. So we're going to stick with that for today. And you can see what it's doing is it's spitting out, like, the recipe is basically just creating a bunch of CSV files. So there's coding conventions, and each CSV file has a markdown file that goes along with it, sort of explaining to the agent what this CSV file is and what the column descriptions are, so it knows, gives it more context. Talks about there's error handling, dependency usage, library usage, and again, markdown files that go along with it. And then what I'm looking for here is, and there's also column architecture, which is a specific spec that FinOS uses for describing the architecture of an application, and then a lot of our customers part of that. So you can see there's just a ton of really good information here that it's all pulling database connections, messaging, all from the LST. And then you'll see it also updates, in this case, the Claude.md file, but it supports other agents as well, whether it's Codex or Copilot. It'll update the agent config file to say, hey, you have this information, you've got this Prethink stuff, you should use it before you start going and grepping everything. So kind of to tell the agent that what it's got and how to use it, basically. And I think there's probably what's great about this is that this is extensible, it's customizable depending on your environment. I imagine this recipe is going to continue to grow as we discover more useful things in the agent and more useful context that we can add to this configuration. So
I think that's an important call out. I mean, you can see at the top it says update prethink context no AI starter, and that's because the idea is that you would take a dependency on your recipe jar, you would take a dependency on this recipe, and then you would add additional structured knowledge to it. So things that matter for your environment, ways that anti-patterns and things like that, additional recipes that you want to get data for and put into this prethink. You can also see in the Claude.md here, the very first line, because this is I think this is new, right? So this is being added to this repository, but it's adding this section that has what looks like a kind of an HTML comment called prethink context. And so that separates it from the rest. And so that if it needs to be updated, or if you have an existing Claude.md, it knows exactly the section it needs to go update when you make those changes.
Oh yeah, good point. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, because you might have other things in your Claude.md file, right, that you want to know about. Yeah.
You touched on this a little bit, but we've had some confusion about the no AI versus AI. Like, I thought this was for AI. It is, but you don't have to use AI to generate it. So that's the key difference.
You can, but you don't have to.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
In fact, I think one of the things that it does in here is it actually estimates the amount of tokens that it would take if you used AI to give it more information. I think that's what this guy is here, right? So, that's what this guy is. So you kind of get a sense of, if you did want to try the AI version, what would that actually take? So, I mean, you're talking to customers about this, right, Kevin? So what are some of the things that people are talking about customizing and adding to this within their environments?
Yeah, so we have a couple of examples, but the biggest one we've seen is end of lives. So we have been approached by several different customers for, hey, all of these things that we have are going end of life. Like, they don't necessarily care to be on the latest and greatest of everything, but they don't want to be on a version that the vendor's not going to support anymore. So like Python 3.10 to 3.11 or 3.12. things like that. And so they all have their own internal database for this. Like one of our customers built their own end of life database based on what's available out there publicly. And so they would hook into that and get, the versions of dependencies and when their end of life is. So they would enhance that like dependency list report with when the end of life for that dependency is, if it exists.
Yeah, that's interesting. Makes sense. That's probably driving a lot of their change campaigns, right? So
Yep.
good to have that. Awesome. Okay, so that's the recipe that actually puts the context out there. And like you pointed out, Kevin, it basically just adds files to the repository, so you can commit it directly to the repo and sort of keep it updated and run it either. I don't, what have we been seeing customers talk about doing, like committing it on like as part of a CI job, or what's the pattern there?
It's a good question. It's so new that they haven't decided. Most of them haven't decided exactly when they're going to update the Prethink context. I think with the CLI 4.0 and we didn't touch on this, but one of the features is the V3 format of the LST, which is why the V4 of the CLI is much faster, is because the LST is much faster to navigate. It has random access capabilities instead of having to visit every node. And part of that
is a good
is
future topic for this show.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
absolutely. There'll be a good demo for that.
Yeah.
You'll be able to. It will update the Prethink context as it goes along. Potentially, that's the future state. Right now, the other piece of this context that I think is kind of hard to visualize when you just look at the recipe results is that this context is hierarchical. So you have what we commit in the recipe is on a specific repository. But when you look at the Moderne SaaS or a repos.csv, it has an organizational hierarchy to it. So my team of 4 engineers or 10 engineers or whatever, we have our 50 to 100 repos that we work on. Those 50 to 100 repos each have their own Prethink context, but they would also have a shared Prethink context that explains how they fit together. And where that lives would probably be, at any given company, would probably be some internal wiki or some internal service that it can then make a request out, like the CLI can make a request out, not the CLI, sorry, a tool from the mod MCP would make a request out to that location to get the hierarchical Prethink context. You get like, overall, here's our company Prethink context, here's our like organizational, and then here's like the local Prethink context in this repository.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Well, and I think you just teased another feature of the CLI4, which is the mod MCP
Oops, sorry.
tool.
I'm very excited.
Great.
About
Yeah, no, that's all.
CLI4.
It's exciting. I'm excited about it too. So yeah, we've got at least 3 topics for this show just that we've already brought up. So that's great.
Yep.
So all right. So we know what the recipe does. We know it's spitting out all that awesome data. So now how does it get used? So let's take a look at a demo. Gotta stop this first and then. Okay, so I've got 4 terminal windows here, actually. Hopefully you can see this. I zoomed in as far as pretty far. So I've got on the left side here, I've got a repository. I'm using it's the same repository that we were just looking at on the platform. I'm using sort of a mono repo. This is a sample e-commerce application that has a lot of different components, and so I just wanted like a sufficiently complicated application to do this demo against. And so on the left side here, I've got no Prethink. There's nothing. None of the Prethink context files are in here. So just to show you that. So we don't have Claude. We don't have this moderne.context or .moderne context. Well, there's nothing in there. On the with Prethink side, this is the same exact repository that's been synced, and the LST was built, and the recipe was run, and it spit out all these files, right? So we've got the cloud.md context file, and we've got all of the data tables and the markdown that we just saw, right? So that's all in there. So if we were to run Claude on each of these, And let's just ask it a simple question. You've probably got some good examples we can talk about, Kevin, of the kinds of things that you're asking agents that Prethink is helping it with. But we'll start with something simple here, like what will break if I change the order entity? Maybe we need to go add some things to order, and we want to know what it's going to be affected by.
For what it's worth, this is historically how I've used Modi in the Sass, like or find types and ultimately like what's going to break if I make this change. Because when I worked on the made changes to the platform frequently, I was constantly worried about breaking other services.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean that I think it was probably you who I heard this kind of a question from, and I was like, oh, that's a great sample question. So you can see here, it's actually fired up a subagent. That's what that explore means, is it's fired up a subagent to go do a whole bunch of exploration, and it's reading all these files. You can see it's counting amount of tool uses here, and it's doing a bunch of stuff. I'm going to kick this one off at the same time.
Yeah, we've already run the one on the left for almost a minute.
It's already been almost a minute, yeah. Now look at the right at the top. It says, "Let me check the Prethink context for order entity." So it already knows to use Prethink because it's looking at the context.
Wow!
I did not run Claude with the dangerously skip permission, so I'm gonna have to just press 1 over and over again. You can see it's using DuckDB. That's a faster way to kind of get the information from the CSVs instead of just running grep. Doing all this. Okay, so this took 1 minute and 20 seconds. This is an updated context file list. Okay, anyway. All right, so this took about 1 minute and 20. And if we scroll up, it actually shows us here, the subagent took 53,000 tokens. Just the subagent by itself. All right, so this took less time, 50 seconds. So if we look at the information, it's pretty much, it's similar information here, right?
It looks like there's actually more information on the right.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, there's more.
Yeah,
it's more detailed. Yeah, I think you're right. So, it's comparable, though, certainly. And so the trick here is, how do we know how many tokens this all used? It seems like it can be kind of complicated to understand what tokens Claude is using. At least that's been my experience. So we can see this has been 50,000 tokens, but there's no other indication anywhere else about how many tokens are used. So it turns out that Claude actually does store that information locally on your machine. It's basically stored in these sort of like session files in your home.claude directory. So we can actually get this information, and I actually have a script that goes out and pulls that information from all of those sessions. So but we're going to need to grab the session ID from this first. So let me just get out of this. I'll just grab the session ID here.
So there is actually a tool inside Claude. I think, was it /context?
Which will context, tell you, yeah, I think it'll give it to you that way too. I'll try that over here.
But I think it doesn't give you the subagent tokens when you do that.
Or at least I see what you're saying. Yeah, we can do that actually. I can do that over here, right? Yeah. So if you do context, it'll show you kind of how some certain tokens. We have to know what tokens it's even referring to here. Like what does it mean by messages? What does it mean, right? So like you just have to have a lot more information about what all that stuff even is. And there's different kinds of tokens too, right? Like there's like cache hits versus input tokens and output tokens. They all have different costs and stuff, right? I mean, every service is different, but I think it's all similar kind of stuff. So it can be difficult to kind of figure out token usage at this point. But if we do this, we're going to find out that we used a total. So look at this. So this is the main session. Just without the subagent, we used, 68,000 tokens, and a bunch of those were cache reads, cache writes. But the subagent that it fired up to go do that analysis used a whole bunch of tokens. So it was, we're in the millions, right? So we're living up to the name of this particular stream. So anyway, so then we've got the output here. So this is without Prethink. And so now we can kind of get the same idea here. I think there's a way to get the session ID from, is it status? Do you know how to do it? I guess I'll just exit.
I don't. Yeah.
There is a command to grab the session ID, but I always just pull it from here.
But you probably just ask it as well, but then it would use more tokens trying to figure that out.
Using tokens to figure it out. That's true.
Yep.
Okay, so if we do the same thing over here, you can see we used like a third of the amount of tokens. And if you also compare the different kinds of tokens, we're talking about, the more expensive kinds of tokens are I think it's typically the output is the more expensive, the most expensive one. So if you're comparing output, we've got quite a bit fewer. Here's 8,000 versus 3,000, right? So it's not a perfect comparison. Obviously, it depends on what question you're asking and what information it needs and all that kind of stuff. But you can see it's pretty drastic difference when it already has the information and it doesn't have to go off and fire off a whole subagent to go read files and do all that kind of stuff. And I imagine, again, for topic for future day, but if we're using trigrep and some other things to go even faster, it could potentially use even fewer tokens and return even faster results.
Ken tells us that I don't have access to
status. He says status is correct. Yeah, let's just look at what that looks like just for fun. Oh yeah, there you go. Session ID. I knew there was a command for that.
Oh, that is handy.
Yeah, cool. All right, thanks for that. All right, so that was my demo. That was my demo, Kevin. So I was alluding to sort of the types of questions that we ask Claude. So what are some things that you've run into where Prethink might be particularly helpful?
So the way that we talked about this a little bit earlier, that not on stream, but you and I talked about this a little bit last week. So how I use Claude is a little bit different. We have this specific repo that we give it anytime that we don't know where the change we need to make is going to be, like if we're researching a bug or something like that. So we give it this internal repository, and we say, hey, I have this problem. Go find why this problem exists and fix it for me, create a PR, and then I'll review the PR, make sure it makes sense, and hand make changes if necessary. And as part of that
resolution workflow, basically.
Exactly. Yeah, it's more than that. I mean, that's why it was built originally, and it's that's why it was built originally, was for issue resolution. Right. But it's really useful for also new feature development. Like, hey, I know that we want to accomplish this. This is our architecture, blah, blah, blah. But I don't know the best place to do this. And so help me figure out where the best place to do this is. And then we'll, argue with Claude for a while about that. And when it does that, so it usually goes and finds a set of repositories. And this is where that hierarchical context would be useful for it to know what all the repos are, what they contain, and things like that, and then pull down those repos. And so now when it pulls down those repos, it's then got to do a bunch of globbing, a bunch of grepping, and things like that. And so Prethink has cut that down pretty considerably. So now we don't yet have deployed the hierarchical organization level context. So it figures that out by asking GitHub, basically. I think it remembers too, like at least mine has a persistent memory file where it learns over time, and so then it can go look up things in there. But then it clones those repos and then reads the Prethink context to figure out, okay, well, where might this change need to be made? And so then it only needs to read like a few files to understand the context that it needs. And so I know your demo was more focused on answering a question about the repo. And my workflow is mostly, in general here, is mostly, fix problems or make new, not new problems, make new features. And those both require the same amount of context to go figure out how to do them.
It's going to have to ask the type of question that I asked just to be able to start to do that, right? I
exactly.
Yeah, it makes sense. And so are we just checking in? We're just checking in the context. So it's basically just pulling it from the repo. Yeah, cool.
Exactly. Yeah. And so we will have like organizational level context and probably an open rewrite one and a Moderne one and whatnot for where that lives. And so then folks working on open rewrite as well, our open source contributors will also have access to that Prethink context for the open rewrite repositories.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's cool. Yeah. I mean, as we're writing more and more recipes with agents too, like,
yeah.
Helpful. Yeah.
Yep. And I think we're set up really well to get to be able to write good recipes. I mean, I think Open Rewrite in general has a lot of safeguards in place to make sure that agents are making good changes, and that it is well tested enough, and that enough people have had their eyes on the thing that it's doing, that we can expect good results from the agents. I think one thing I wanted to touch on is we've seen different results on whether it uses Prethink depending on the agent.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Okay.
So I don't know if have you tried more than just Claude on this?
I have not tried more than just Claude on this.
Okay.
Yeah.
So by default, what we see normally is companies that are in the early stage of their adoption of LLMs they usually just have VS Code and Copilot. And Copilot, the free version of Copilot in VS Code uses GPT 4.1. GPT 4.1, the best model of the first half of last year, but it doesn't understand context. It doesn't have all of the improvements we've made in the last year in terms of context. And so if you point it to Prethink, it will usually pick it up. I found that Opus and Opus 4.6, 4.5 as well, because I use 4.5 a lot, and Codex 5.3 are really good at picking up Prethink context. For Copilot specifically, you have to have it in the repo in .github/Copilot instructions. I think they're expanding out to other locations of agent tools, but that was my experience. Was I had to have it there before any of the non-Opus models would pick it up.
Gotcha. So you have to explicitly tell it like, hey, there's Prethink over here, instead of it just figuring it out from the config file.
Right. And we don't want that, of course. I mean, that we want you to be able to commit this Prethink and install the set of agent tools from the CLI, and then you just get superpowers. So it just gives your LLM superpowers.
Yeah. So basically, if it's a newer model, like a more recent model, it seems to be picking it up just fine.
Yeah, a newer model, and specifically the ones that were made for code are much better at picking it up. So Codex and Opus, and even Sonnet is pretty good at it. Not as good as Opus, but it's pretty good at it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I was thinking about this too, because I've only just begun, using agents for coding, and I mean, I guess you all have too, but you've been doing it longer than me, at least. Before this, like, how did we were there other ways to provide context, or did we always just have to rely on grep? Like, is there a way to like reference documentation? Like, how have we done this before, and like, what can we learn from that as far as Prethink goes?
Yeah, so I mean, when I first started, I remember first starting to use LLMs for coding with ChatGPT. I think most of us used a lot of ChatGPT last year and the beginning of last year, before Claude Code really took off. And ChatGPT, you can give it like a file and be like, hey, here's my file. Tell me why this doesn't work. And it's like, it did its best. I mean, it helped me write a lot of bash scripts last year. So I have nothing really negative to say about it in that respect. But as soon as I was like, okay, now I need to give you more context about it would just get confused. And so it just could not hold all of that information in its context window, and a bigger context window is not necessarily better as well. Like I have experienced with Sonnet 4.6 with the 1 million context window that it starts forgetting things. So a bigger context window is not necessarily better. Like more compact context is really useful as well. But yeah, providing it, a set of files, and then once Claude Code came out, it all became about putting. At first, it was like, how much can you put in your Claude.md? But it can only realistically respond to so many instructions before it's like, I can't meet all these requirements. I'm just gonna drop one. Like, I know you said we have to do test-driven development, but this test keeps failing, and I'm gonna just comment it out because I don't want to. It's really become an actual developer at this point.
I was gonna say, it's very human of it. Like, it's kind of crazy. Yeah.
But yeah, so there just weren't very many good ways to provide this kind of context.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Well, hence Prethink, right?
Yep. And I think another thing I really like about Prethink is the pointers to things. So I've found this working locally. I'll have it often draft me a Slack message based on, I'm like, man, this is a lot of information, and I need to get this across really quickly to somebody. I can write that. I probably will rewrite whatever the LLM spits out because I'd like it to sound like it has to have actually come from me. But I'm like, man, I just need you to shrink this down. Yeah, exactly. Ken says RMRF tests. Can you highlight that comment? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Test pass. Exactly. So in order to do that, I have to tell it how I sound, or it has to run our Slack MCP to go read my messages. So I created like a Slack tone.md, a GitHub tone.md, and then I just point my Claude MD at that, and it's kind of like GraphQL. If you're familiar with GraphQL, GraphQL's built so that you only pull the data that you need, and it doesn't do extra computation. And so essentially now your Claude.md is pointing at my Claude.md is pointing at the slacktone.md, and it's only going to go access it if it needs to. And similarly, Prethink, you've got Claude.md, which tells you, or agents.md or copilot instructions.md, that points at the individual markdown files, which then point at the individual CSV files. And then you have DuckDB in there as well. So it only needs to make the requests, only needs to fetch the data that it needs to fetch, rather than have to read the whole file.
Right. That makes sense. So it's not wasting precious context window space.
Right. Basically. Yeah, not context window space, not tokens. And I think this is where right now developers and the leaders at companies that are paying for these tokens they have two different goals. Developers want to get things done fast and right. Yeah. And leadership wants to get things done fast and cheap. And usually right. In most companies, they want to get it done right as well.
Well, it's the old fast, cheap, good, right. Pick two, right? Like
pick one, or if you're lucky,
maybe.
Pick two. Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So they have I wouldn't call them competing goals, because the leadership wants them to use fewer tokens because they're just burning through tokens right now, and the developers want this stuff to get done quicker so they don't have to like have 10 of these running at a time and context switching between them, which has a very big cost. And that's a new skill that we as engineers are having to develop, because we've historically been really, really bad at context switching, and now that is the skill that we have to develop and like retrain our brains on.
Interesting point. Yeah.
Anyway, so making that faster makes it so that we have to context switch less. And so that's better for us and our mental health. And then it's better for the company and how much they're paying. So,
it's fewer tokens, less time. Too.
Less time. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's also interesting, in your demo, we saw it used, what was the difference in tokens at 1.6 million to, what was it?
400,000 something.
400,000.
So it was like a third.
A third, and then the timing was
again. It's a little bit not quite apples to apples, because that's total tokens, but like I think if you look at the cache hits versus the writes, but yeah. Anyway, it's general. I think.
We did see, I think when we first started testing this, and it's LLMs, so it's non-deterministic. It'll be a little bit different every time. But I think our very first test with this was an 80% increase in speed and reduction in tokens. So. Yeah. It was like took a fifth the time and a fifth the tokens. And so like that's what we want to get to. You're supercharging your agents here.
Totally. Yeah. I think actually it was close to that if you look at like a specific token type and not all the cache reads that it's
Right.
doing, which are, I think the way the models work is the cache reads are like super inexpensive because they happen so frequently, right?
Right.
But you're saving having to do a full read. So yeah. Well, and this stuff's only going to get better and better, right? As we learn more about what context helps it, and like as we have more and more information that we can feed to it, and as the agents themselves get better, right? So I think it's only just gonna improve and improve.
There was something happened over the course of the last few months. I think before Christmas, I don't know there was a specific point at which this happened, but before Christmas, most changes that I would do through AI had to have quite a bit of rewrites done to them before I would be willing to put them up in front of other people, and a lot of manual testing. And something happened in between then, maybe at Opus 4.5 or something like that, where now I'm generally like I'll give it a once over locally first, but I'm generally pretty confident in it. It's gotten enough context and done enough its own due diligence. The model has to be able to put out something that I won't feel like this is AI slop. That this is not. This is as good as I would do if I did this manually, or and sometimes better if it comes up with something that I hadn't thought of.
For sure, yeah. I've kind of found, because I've been using it more and more for various things, for either kind of trying to figure out something that's not working, or like updating a document, or documentation and stuff. And like I found that it sort of removes the whole investigative detective work that has to happen. It's like, it just points me right to the thing pretty quickly. I'm like, oh, okay, that was what I missed or whatever. And so and it's also allowing me to do things that I was maybe like previously a little bit hesitant to do, because like, oh, I don't know the code well enough. I'm not like really a developer. Can I really, but now I'm like, oh, I'll just throw this to Claude and see if Claude can figure it out. And then it's like, oh, this code looks pretty good. Like I could open a PR for this and not, not feel like a complete, imposter. So, yeah. So I think it's just coming along pretty well. Do you think, I think, things have gotten better. Obviously, like you were saying before, it was like it would get confused, and ChatGPT version and stuff. But I mean, even now, as we're looking to improve, do you think I think you said something at the top about like arguing with Claude and going back and forth with Claude, and like that's so relatable for me too. But like, do you think that frustration often is context based? Is that kind of the still like the biggest limitation that we're running into?
I think so. It's hard to say, but yes, I think so. Because most of the times I'm arguing with it, it's either forgetting something. Like that's probably the most common thing, that it forgets something that I had told it, or an instruction I'd put in my Claude.md or something like that, because it's had to just pull in so much other context. There are cases where it just makes an incorrect assumption, but I've found those happening fewer and fewer. And especially now that we have Prethink context committed to our repos, it is able to use that to be, to figure out what it needs to say and do.
Right. So because like if it doesn't know something, instead of just guessing, it'll ask you, or it'll look in the context more and more. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of the experience I had, previous to the last couple months, was always just like, where did you even get that from, Claude? Like ChatGPT, how did you get that? Oh, sorry, Bryan. Yeah, I made that up. Oh, okay. Thanks for letting me know. So, but that's happening less and less, and it'll say like, hey, I don't have this. Do you have this? Can I get this from you? Like, so, that's interesting. Yeah. So yeah, context is still going to be the thing.
I'm given to understand from thought leaders in this space that that's not actually the models improving. It's more the engineering work done by the Anthropic and OpenAI teams in the tooling that they provide. So Claude Code and Codex. It's making sure that it's like having it ask itself, did you hallucinate this? Are you sure?
Right. Right.
And making sure that it puts something in front of the user that makes sense instead. So I've found they hallucinate a lot less. It still happens, but
Sure.
they have a lot more tools in place to make sure that they can double check themselves. I asked ChatGPT to produce an image. Wish I'd had this, to produce an image of how I treat it. And it's like, so it had me there, and then like it was my like little robot assistant, but I was saying, now did you check that? Did you verify that? Is that true? Get me a link.
That's funny. No, that makes sense. Mine
yeah.
would probably be similar, because I'm always like, where did this information come from?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Well, so it sounds like what you're saying and what you've heard is like the models themselves, there obviously have been incremental improvements to the models, like you said, for ChatGPT, 4.1 versus 5.3, big difference. But it's more about sort of the tooling and the ecosystem around the LLMs that is helped more.
Exactly. And that's where we come into the conversation.
I was just going to say, yeah,
like that Prethink is, hey, we'll do this work for you up ahead of the LLM even having to do anything itself.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we've been talking a lot about sort of replacing GPU with CPU, right? Like if you run this recipe, you're going to just go, it's just a CPU. It's just going to go run and pull all the information and put it out there, as opposed to like trying to infer it all based on what the model sees. So
yep.
The more we can
find
ways to do that, whether it's a recipe or whatever else, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and we talked about the CLI v4 and the incremental LST building, and giving the LLM access to be able to write and run recipes itself, like in the moment. The more we can do that, you're right, it's trading GPU for CPU, but not only that, it's trading somebody else's GPU for your CPU. So not only that, but big enterprises that are sensitive about sending data outside of their walls are going to be doing a lot less of that, because it's going to be running that recipe there on the machine. It's a tool that the LLM will reach out to, and then it doesn't have to send very much data out, if any, out to the outside of their walls.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I like so it's not even just about the token savings and the time savings. It's also just about sort of bringing it more into your own kind of like a security
in your walls.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Very cool. What else? Anything else we can talk about, or should we wrap up?
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else to talk about, specifically about Prethink and how we use agents. I think I mean, it's interesting to watch.
Are we running the recipes and updating? How frequently are we updating the Prethink context? You were talking about.
I think right now we're just doing it. We're doing it fairly infrequently, but yeah, it's something we'd want to do on a regular occurrence, nightly or weekly or anytime there's a change or something like that. We've done it right now. I think we're doing it manually weekly, just running the recipe in the SAS and then submitting PRs for it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really, it doesn't always have to be updated. And I think, like I mentioned at the beginning, we're going to be doing, it'll be part of most commits in the future, as in you'll make a change to the recipe using your LLM, and then the LLM will also run the tool that runs the Prethink recipe locally very quickly, and produces that. So it won't have to be run on a schedule for very long.
Makes sense. Yeah.
I think that's all I can think of for today. It's been
I think that's a lot of good stuff. I don't know. I learn every time I talk to anyone using this stuff more regularly. I learn so much. It's like, oh yeah, I didn't think about that fact. So there's still so much new stuff as we're all kind of figuring out this new workflow. Yes.
Yep. Thanks, everybody.
I guess so. All right. Well, then I guess we'll wrap up. So next week, you'll get at least one of your regular hosts back. I believe Tim's going to be here next week. So, but it's been a pleasure getting to co-host this with you, Kevin.
Yeah, same.
A lot of fun.
Yeah, same for me. Thanks everybody for joining us.
Thanks y'all for joining us. Yeah. See you next time.
See you next time.